being able to really foster 500, 200 people and placing as much emphasis on the importance of each one of those people, I think is a way to stay connected with your audience, irrelevant of how big that gets.
Hello and welcome to You're in Charge, where we are helping you with starting your business journey by sharing stories and insights from the best in the biz. My name is Sav and you may know me from MasterChef Australia. And just a few months ago, I decided to leave my corporate job and go into the world of private chefing and working for myself in my own business. And it is true what they say, starting your own business is hard work. But the great thing is starting your business can also be incredibly rewarding, which is why I've teamed up with ThincHer at the University of Adelaide to learn a bit more about the business of doing business. Together, we will sit down with some trailblazing women and talk to them about the business behind their successes. I'm talking about the business of building confidence, the business of bouncing back, the business of brokering security, and the business of being you through it all. Today, we have a special guest that brings a fresh perspective to the world of social media and digital influence. I am incredibly excited to introduce to you Brooke Upton, one of South Australia's biggest influencers and leading digital talents. Known for her bold and creative takes on fashion, lifestyle, beauty and travel, Brooke has captivated an audience of over 170,000 followers across platforms such as TikTok and Instagram. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Very exciting actually to have this chat with you.
Yes.
The first thing is the obvious one. You've got over 170,000 followers, people watching you, do your thing, and it's put you at the forefront of being, influence is the word.
Yes, it is.
It's a big word. Tell us a little bit about how you got started, what got you there. I'm sure, lots of people have asked about the journey, but
yes,
just so our listeners know.
So basically, I have always been really interested in the creatives industry, and I always had this understanding growing up that I wasn't a creative person. I guess I kind of aligned creativity to drawing or art, or had a very narrow focus on what that was. And I knew that I wanted to be able to create and connect, and marketing was kind of a conversation that always came front of mind in that discussion. So I actually missed out on becoming a doctor by a few percent and went, oh my gosh, I need a full rejig of my life, what actually feels passionate to me. And I went to uni and studied media and communications. And across that time, I was posting online. I was really enjoying kind of this fresh social media landscape that was coming up. But at that point, was just posting for my friends and had no real strategy kind of involved. And it was in some of my classes that I was sitting there, and there was kind of a few aha moments where I was like, you know what, I can apply this same structure to the way that I would be branding businesses and marketing businesses to myself. I myself am a brand kind of with legs, with a heartbeat, and the same principles apply. So kind of shifted my mindset in that regard to being able to view myself through the lens of a professional. And, started changing the conversations I was having with people, going, you do this as a hobby, to going, no, I do this as a business. Yes. Which is a conversation so many people in the creatives industry are constantly, fighting a little bit of an uphill battle with, kind of validating their role as professionals. So again, changed the lens in which I kind of viewed myself through, sat down with myself and had a real strategy session on who I was, who I wanted to talk to, and the value that I wanted to provide my audience. And kind of hit go.
Nice. Now you mentioned something interesting, is you said, it's a brand with 3 legs and a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So, and I know obviously you do brand work for other organizations, entities, what have you. But what would you say is Brooke Upton as the brand?
As a brand, with any strategy that I kind of write, I'm always aware of the fact that I want to entertain, I want to inspire, and I want to educate. So as kind of the ebbs and flows have come through my life and, my content pillars have shifted, I would say for myself, it's just making sure that adding value in a way that is authentic. And I'm a fashion, lifestyle, travel, beauty kind of blogger, ticking all the boxes I try. So I really try to inspire people to see the way that they can live their day-to-day lives, romanticize that in between, and the way that they can use fashion and beauty to present themselves to the world in a way that is congruent to themselves.
Yes. I think that's a very well constructed answer, because there's a lot of people, especially personally, it's just personal observation.
Yes.
It's like over COVID, when that world of
Yes.
social media really took off as a PR thing,
Yes.
a marketing thing, may not necessarily have had that strong brand identity.
No.
And you talked about, your pillars, which really are your values.
Yes. Yeah.
How's it evolved since when you started versus now? What changed, if anything has, or?
Well, I have been full-time content creator for the last 3 years now. Before then, it was a little bit more fluid, but as I've developed my business and wanted to, I've aged over that time as well, and the brands and lifestyle and values and focuses in my life have shifted. But at the moment, I'm really focused on travel. I'm really focused on the fashion side of my journey. And also, I'm actually starting a business early in the new year.
Oh.
I know, which is very exciting. I've had the privilege of developing this audience that, so many businesses would feel so grateful to have, this large quantity of people that have this authentic trust. So I was like, you know what, let's capitalize and create something that's an extension of my arm, and it's all very exciting.
And one of the things I actually wanted to touch on that you just said is about the authenticity, yeah. And about how you've got this mass of people essentially that really sort of have that buy-in with you because of how you come across. So
Yes.
because of the way that you present yourself with the confidence and the clarity. Talk to me a bit about that authenticity. How do you continue to foster it? How did you start?
Yes.
How did you continue to foster it?
After existing online for so long now, a lot of us have had social media with us for half our lives. We have such a strong sense of media literacy that if we step online and see something that doesn't sit right, we are immediately clocked onto it. So you're actually doing yourself such a disservice by showing up in a way that is ingenuine, because people can see straight through it straight away. One of the things I always try to know is the way that I most strongly show authenticity is in a way that my audience actually doesn't see. So when I'm dealing with brands, when I'm developing my strategy, every 3 months, my manager and I sit down for a real locked in session of who I want to be for the next 3 months, who I want to target, the brands I want to work with, how can I organically show up and support them that can, then feed into a monetized opportunity. So I reckon I would say no to maybe 70% of opportunities that come through the door, because they're incongruent to me. And I understand that, someone that has built we wake up with people, we go to sleep with people, we're with people during their most vulnerable times. It's a service to them to make sure that the way you show up is of value to you. And in fostering that kind of trust, it flows into your work outside of that. Again, we were speaking before about the way that social media has shifted from a space that is purely a social network to connect with people to now becoming what is now a marketing platform. So by stepping online to a marketing platform, connecting with your audience, they're going to want to engage with those monetized branded pieces that, at the end of the day do pay your bills. So in staying true to the brands that I want to work with in those strategy sessions, I maintain, I try to say to myself, would I do this for free? Would I do this opportunity for free? If the answer is no, then it's probably not a brand that sits well with my heart. So yeah, the stuff that goes on behind closed doors is probably the way I show up most authentically.
One of the key things I think that I picked up on with what you said is this amazing drive that you have that's driven by not but the people.
Yes.
And the people that you essentially are servicing, which is actually, I think, in this space is quite refreshing to see, because it is very much a personal brand thing and you can get caught up in the I.
Yes.
Kudos to you that you are viewing it from the lens of, okay, how do I, add value?
Yes.
As cliche as that term is. And also there was something beautiful that you said. You said, we wake up with these people and
yes,
go to bed with these people, I'm literally thinking me like doom scrolling.
You wake up, doom scroll. Yeah, seriously.
And it's such a normal part of most of our days. And it's really refreshing, I think, to see that you are viewing it from that lens.
Yes. So, yep. It's a relationship.
It is. And I don't think not everyone does. There's different approaches to, I think, obviously how the marketing, subtle marketing and this with the social media.
Agree.
Some people have their little sort of like, theme that they do.
Yes.
Or they've got their line that they do, which is the hook.
Yes.
Or they've got a look. What I get from you is like, because it's so adaptable, because you've not essentially locked yourself in to this one, like, okay, this is my niche.
Yes.
It's more sort of like, how do I, does it make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And on that, I think, I've always had, through my degree, been able to have this understanding of needing to have a very specific understanding of the person that I'm talking to, what their motivators are, their pain and pleasure points, and how I can connect with them through those things and strategize around that. I'm very much under the understanding that this is a business for me as well. So being able to, create a space for myself online where I can foster these relationships, build that connection, to then be able to take myself down more of a multifaceted business approach. We're going through a much quicker cycle of attention span online now where, people are able to blow up overnight, with the introduction of TikTok and this virality of videos and trends. So creating a space where you've built connection for long enough and built enough trust that people connect with you for longer than that 5 minutes of fame. Yes, absolutely. This is something that I want to be able to, foster through every stage of my life, no matter where I am. And it's afforded me so many privileges when it comes to travel, flexibility where I work. And, those things are very important to me. So making sure I do the right thing and treat those relationships well is a no-brainer.
And like, it's interesting that you say that, because you see, it's very classic marketing, I think, because you look at some of the big companies in the world that people absolutely have loyalty towards, like the whole Coke business.
Yes.
The debate. So an example. And there's lots of stuff like that, but I think it just comes from, yes, the organizations have existed for a long time, but they've existed because they maintain, I think, that sustainability when it comes to fostering the loyalty.
Putting out.
You're not feeding necessarily into the short attention span, which is really interesting. And just coming back to the point that you made about, things that are not like things that are incongruent, brands that are incongruent, because I know we'll have a lot of listeners that are young, that are starting out, that want to get into entrepreneurship, into the business side of things. And I think when you are not just young, but when you're young to the business and you're new to the business, you feel like you need to take on all these opportunities because, like, you can't afford to the adage of like, because, you can't afford to be choosing.
No. And it's exciting and it's fresh and you're like, oh my goodness, like what a privilege that X, Y, Z, E, F, G, all are interested in me. And that's why I really recommend to anybody that is trying to start out in this business is to really sit down with yourself again and strategize. I love to, again, work out your content pillars for me. That's travel, that's fashion, that's, education, beauty and lifestyle, full stop. They're my 5 pillars. I'll go down and then create 10 subcategories around that. So then when these opportunities do come back to me, I've got a reference point to go, although I'm excited and, the money may look fantastic or the opportunity may look fantastic, it's about weighing up, is this aligned to what I do and where I am? I remember someone saying to me once that if you keep accepting things that are 1% away from your true values, by the time you've accepted 100 jobs, you're 100% away from what you started as. And it's always stuck with me because it's the 1%ers that add up. Obviously having flexibility to be open to new opportunities, no, absolutely. But coming back to those moments that are valuable for you can kind of bring you back when things get exciting and you know what, like you're going to always be able to create opportunities for yourself. I'm a big believer in that. And, when you say no to one door, I'm telling you, the biggest door will come swinging through straight after. So.
No, and I think that's very inspiring because I feel that that's something that I sort of personally had to not necessarily deal with, because the brand identity for me personally was always very strong.
Yes.
So that it was never, I wasn't suddenly going to go into trouble.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yes, yeah.
So it's one of those things like I had to consider, because now I do travel a bit for work. Do I actually want to engage? Hey, these are the things I loved eating when I see here.
It can all intersect.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting that you said about like having almost pretty much like your little outline.
Yes.
Just looking at it and going, okay, where does this fit?
And we're multifaceted people, you know, we have these brand identities, absolutely, but we can wear all the hats and we can make things fit across all of these spaces, and people don't expect us to be one-dimensional. We are multifaceted creatures. So, you know, being able to, it's also a way to not get bored by what you're creating as well. And we don't want that creative fatigue. So being able to, you know, dabble into different sectors through that same tone and through that same like value is a way that it stays
Not stagnant.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's really interesting as well. Now, another thing that I actually want to touch on, we did touch on earlier, was in, you know, the money. That's the obvious thing.
Yes.
That's what's paying your bills.
Yes.
That's what's keeping you
absolutely
functioning in society.
Yes.
In terms of the assessment that you make, so say, for example, you might have a brand that approaches you on the surface. It looks like, yep, you know, it aligns with this thing that I want to do.
Yes.
Firstly, you know, how do you actually make the call? Like what sort of like, give us, if you can, give us a little bit of an insight into the thought process of going, okay, this is actually what I want to do. And then also a little bit about how you communicate your needs. Because I think when you are a woman and when you are younger, and especially in the field of being in the creative space, and like it's not an excuse, you may not necessarily be heard.
Yes.
And I think for me personally, it was different because I came into it a bit older and I always was almost aggressively confident with what I was doing. But that's who I needed to be to get my message across, and not everyone's like that.
Agree.
So how does it work for you? How do you make sure that you communicate your needs, especially in situations where, you know, you may go,
there may be some grey area? This process for me starts before a job actually aligns. It's kind of something that I've always been very vocal about, is that I will not enter into things that don't feel right for myself. And, you know, for example, I have really struggled with skin across my life, and I got really sensitive skin. There was a brand that I have pitched that I've really wanted to work with forever and ever. This, again, has been a brand that I've strategized and wanted to work with. An offer came across the table for me for a product that I know does not work for me. But there's a whole nother subcategory of this brand that works really well. So when this offer came across the table, it was in front of me and I went, oh, I don't want to miss this opportunity, but it doesn't sit right because, you know, I will not even be able to apply this product in the video. So I made that decision and I spoke with my manager and I said, is there a way that we can communicate with this brand to say, really grateful for this opportunity. Again, the comms that we've had across the last year still stand. Brooke really resides with your brand, but unfortunately this particular product doesn't fit. And you sit there and you wait for the response and you're nervous because you set a boundary. And although it aligns, it's not quite right. So being able to then get an email response back going, absolutely no problem in the world. Next month we've actually got a campaign for that. What was I worried about? You know, what was I worried about? So I think being able to establish again that one door closes, another will open, you know, it's getting rid of that scarcity mindset as well. We can create opportunities for ourselves through, you know, being loud advocates. And that's something I always say to people is like, no one is going to advocate for you more than you will yourself. And you need to be loud about that, whether that's through organically supporting a brand, building connections, putting yourself out there, you know, going to events that by yourself and introducing yourself to X, Y, Z. Yes, it's a saturated market, but it's also not, because the person you're talking to is always going to be different to the X person next to you. So if you're not advocating for yourself, be certain that someone else is advocating for themselves. So yeah, being your own biggest fan, I think, is a way that I kind of set that boundary and make sure that I'm being heard and being seen. And also just being genuine about the connections that I'm wanting to foster as well. And, you know, referring back to what you said about entering into this world as a woman. You know, there's a lot of creative spaces, creatives full stop experience this, but then women as well have a bit more of a harder time validating themselves in circumstances. You know, in female-dominated industries, we do have to speak a little bit louder about the fact that we are validated as professionals, especially when it's something that we're monetizing.
Because it doesn't look like the traditional 9 to 5.
No, there's always been money in advertising. There's always been money in marketing. This is, you know, we've learned that, you know, influencer marketing can be one of the biggest returns of investment for a business. So, you know, sometimes it's just holding your power. I mention this all of the time, but I had a wonderful conversation with a woman once a couple of years ago where I was introducing myself. And she said, "What do you do with yourself?" And I went, "Oh, I'm this and I'm this and I'm this and I'm this." And I danced around the fact of the word influencer. And unbeknownst to me, this woman actually knew me and said, "No, tell me what you do. You're an influencer. Sit in that power, be proud of that power, and rewrite the narrative around what, you know, the lens in which people view that through." And I realized that I was carrying like some inherent bias and a stigma that has been placed upon, you know, and again, another female-driven industry. And the minute that I took a step back and went, this can be whatever I want it to be. I will show up in the way that is valuable to me. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud to be that. And I will rewrite the narrative of influencer because I'm not ashamed of that. I'm a creative person that steps into marketing, works with, you know, businesses on a contractual basis. There's nothing to be ashamed of in that regard.
Yeah. And I really resonate with what you said, because I think just having that sense of, yes, like the word influencer has got like negative connotation, but then you look at a lot of these things that a lot of, I would say, female and people that identify as women in the field of influencing, the things that they do, which is the lifestyle stuff, fashion piece, the makeup, the beauty and all of that stuff, there is this invisible shame about doing that. It's like, oh, you're not doing anything worthwhile. And that you get that notion from people, and I think I resonate with what you said, because the more people I think talk about it, the more people show up unapologetically being who they are, especially I think as women.
Yes,
the more you create space, and I've said that a lot. I've said I'm who I am, so that the person that comes after says go, oh, it's okay.
Yes,
it's allowed you to be that. It's great to see that from like your perspective as well. What I did actually want to tie into, because you said about the market being saturated.
Yes.
Which I'm with you in that I don't agree that it needs to be a competition.
Yes.
It doesn't need to be.
There is space for all. There is a lot of humans on this planet.
A lot of people realize it. And a lot of, I think, people that are young girls, especially all of our listeners, who will be going into a space, I think that's one of the biggest barriers to entry. Thinking, oh, like there's already like fashion and lifestyle.
Yes.
There's already like, you know, chefs on there, and there's already people that do all this stuff. What do you have to say to that? What's your response? And also, how do you then ensure that you know, what have you done, I would say, to make sure that you've got your own sort of, you know, the moment we look at something of yours, we know straight away that it's you. How does that look for you? What do you have to say to people about building that like thing makes it you?
That separates. And going back to that as well, you know, this conversation around there's already someone doing it, it's already a saturated space. You know, they're narratives that we place on ourselves and ceilings that we place above, you know, that kind of try to snuff down our goals and our ideals. And again, there is so many people on this planet, and we are multifaceted. Again, we can connect with multiple people all at once. I think that being able to establish a really strong sense of the messages you like to put out, again, as you know, in the social media landscape, there are so many ways that it is trying to pull us to be very trend orientated and be very attracted to this concept of virality. And I find that the more attached you get to the number and the more attached you get to virality, the further away from long-term success you will get. There is absolutely a space for understanding the social media landscape and understanding how things can become relevant to you. But learning how to take twists on those trends, not getting too attached to the idea of going viral. Sure, the number looks fabulous. And it feels better and it looks amazing and it feels great when you get all this coming through. But, at the end of the day, you would rather, I always say this, you'd rather 10,000 people who are genuinely connected to who you are than, 100,000 people who don't know you from Arthur or Martha. And brands are really clocking onto this concept of, engagement and
longevity that you have with your followers.
Yeah, truly. And, more and more we're seeing brands stepping towards micro influencers and micro creators because their audience have like an innate trust. I sometimes think the bigger the number, the more disconnected it can be, So understanding that you hold power in 50 people or 100 people and, a close friend of mine has, 2,000 followers, but she put up a skirt the other day that sold 150 skirts.
Yeah.
And the same skirt on someone else's page may have sold 4, So understanding that you should foster the community that you have, focus on understanding that, sometimes it can feel like you're speaking into the abyss. And, I was at the Olivia Rodrigo concert not long ago. And I was stood in the stadium and my best friend turned to me and she was just like, if you times this stadium by 3, that is how many people you are talking to when you post a story. And I was like, oh my goodness, sometimes just like.
You feel very insignificant.
Yes, all of a sudden I was like I've got an understanding of this because I have been, in the industry for a little while now, but you're talking to individual people with their own stories and their own background systems.
Whatever buying they have, you don't necessarily know.
No, everyone you're speaking to holds value and holds an opinion of you. So like being able to really foster, 5, 100, 200 people and placing as much emphasis on the importance of each one of those people, I think is a way to stay connected with your audience, irrelevant of how big that gets. So yes, disconnecting from the notion of virality equals success, connecting with your followers, understanding that 50 people have as much power as 50,000 people if they are more connected in a way, and understanding the power of adding value in a social media landscape where we are so media literate and we don't want to just jump online and follow a pretty picture anymore, where we've got this understanding that when we step online we need to be, bettering ourselves Yes, you do. And especially as an Australian consumer, we've got quite a lot of tall poppy syndrome in Australia, massively so. So I remember I went over for a conference in Dallas and understanding how the American market really receives push marketing in a much more open sense than we do. We really need to lead a horse to water here and let them go, we're not telling you to do anything, but if you do, that would be really good. Whereas overseas people are a lot more attuned to being told something. So that fostering of that storyline based on the way that we consume here in Australia is, having an understanding of the cultural landscape in which you're existing.
Because I think there's almost this shame when you have to promote something.
Truly. Yeah.
And it's been interesting because I've got the brands that I work with is primarily focused on food and food industry. To me, I was just like, I actually love these brands. So I'm happy to record myself doing all of this. But the amount of people that actually from my background, MasterChef, that also were in the earlier stages of fostering their brand relations. It was how do you not feel a sense of shame?
I do something. Yes, I had to shift that mindset as well because, again, I'm a human that has bills to pay and, things to do, and I do need to eat and drink water and all those things. So being able to understand that in taking a moment to do what I need to for my business, I'm enabling myself the time, the freedom and the flexibility to continue to create content that is inspiring, entertaining and educating you. In doing that, I'm allowing space to be what you need me to be, I think, as well as making sure that paid.
Literally funding yourself.
Yes. I'm allowing myself the space that we show up on people's platforms and, it's free. We don't sign up to Netflix and expect to not pay for a
I
subscription.
Like, I often see, like, I look at certain creators that I follow, and I'm like, oh my God, I learned so much. I can't believe this app is free.
Yes, I can't believe this is free. Yes, how is this free? But it's not, it's not free.
There's so much more that goes on.
Truly. And, in being able to digest that free content, it has to, there has to be something else elsewhere. So, I
think most people are sympathetic to that.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of the times I'll see comments like people like, get your bag.
Yeah, get it, girl. Yeah, yes.
I love that because I'm like, yes, you understand that.
Yes.
And like people will like and share. And I find personally in my experience where I would put stuff on my broadcast channel.
Yes.
But I say this is paid work.
Yeah.
But the recipe is still really good.
Yes.
And people will like and share and stuff.
Yes.
And they'll be like, oh, I already know this brand, or
because you've built that trust and that genuine connection that people do know that you wouldn't promote X if it didn't align. But you've done the work to make sure that that is congruent to you.
Yeah, and I think it's important because that engagement piece is there, so that when you do to do a paid promotion, people are not going to tell you like no, put off by it because they're like, hey, I'm actually just seeing a slightly different version of the same thing that I like to consume.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's interesting that you mentioned like the consumption in Australia because you find that there's a lot of tall poppy syndrome, but also I find that other markets are just so much more in ways like engaged with their fellow like creative industry.
Agree.
I've been lucky in that because I've got the big MasterChef family. And the moment I post something, they're all in the likes, they're all in the comments.
Immediately on it, yes.
Immediately, but that's because you're part of that club. But then when you're not part of the club and you're a creative that's like just starting out because you love showing food from your culture, where do you go?
Truly.
Pound the club.
No. And that's, that's another tip that I say is like create genuine connection with other creators. I know there's like this, every now and then I'll get a message saying you're only friends with influencers, you're only friends with, well, in the same way, if you're in, the accounting world, you're going to be friends with fellow accountants. It's a way that you foster community and, so I would really recommend to people is to, follow, comment, engage with other creators and, get an understanding. Again, the creatives industry is one where there is so much variation in standardization of pay. And it's because there is a lot of conversation that still needs to be had on blanket rates across the industry. And I think, by fostering more of that community and being connected to, I'd laugh because I was like, oh, I get to have like a Christmas party of one this year, like we don't have a whole office of people of that connection. A friend of mine in Melbourne threw a creators Christmas party last year. It looked fabulous. But so you have to put yourself out there in a way to connect with other creatives and because it's important to foster community in that world.
I think that people forget because you're like I consciously always look at how I consume content.
Very much so.
All the time. I'm like, what is in giving me the inclination to comment on this?
Yes.
I notice that I don't always comment on things.
Oh my gosh, I know.
All lights.
Yes.
So I don't always. I'm like, do you know what? No. And you just start doing it.
I need to make that intention.
And that's even with like the big MasterChef family. And
yes.
Like, I love their work and I'm like, great. But I'm like, why am I not sharing this on my story?
Yes.
Like, why am I not setting this? Like,
and encouraging others as well. Because we're in that world. I know I was just talking about this the other day, actually, that I was the same. I went, oh my gosh, some of my favorite creators, I don't comment on their stuff.
It makes you look a little bit like snobbish and like, oh no, I'm not.
I promise, no. I just have like sent it to all my friends and gone, oh my God, she looks amazing, like.
But if I want to actually comment on.
Yes, advocate loudly for others to allow space for, more people to advocate for you, So.
And I think it comes back to that sentiment of, oh, why am I going to promote someone else's work because there's not enough space for me, which is such, I think,
a scarcity mindset though,
That scarcity mindset's so prevalent.
Yes.
And that's just how society is obviously built now, I think. And you mentioned like the virality of it because we are tied to, oh, why is this not getting 1.2 million views? Like, and people like really get discouraged about that. So I think like this conversation that we've had, it's been incredibly valuable to me because to me, yes, I can see really online since I was quite young, but having to advocate for myself in a position where I'm now working for myself, there's a lot that our listeners can take away Because no doubt from who you are, there's so many things that you're great at, so many things, so many skills that you have, but what's one thing you want to master in the next year?
As I said earlier, I'm launching a business in the new year.
Are you excited to? Are you allowed to tell us about it?
Not entirely. I've got an entire strategy about launching this, so we'll park it. But what I can say though is it is such a genuine extension of me. It will be slightly unexpected, I think, in a good way, I hope. But learning to step into that power in a new way for myself, I think, is something I'm going to choose to master next year. Choosing to, this year was every year I try to have a bit of a saying that I kind of stick to across the year. I haven't worked out my next year one, but this year was good is good enough. I have a real problem with perfection. And so I
think that's unfortunately, it is a generalization, but I think women suffer with.
Yes. Oh, massively so. And, I had to come to the understanding that, in a social media landscape where consistency and quantity is important, that removing a lot of that pressure of perfection for myself was important, because I'm someone innately driven by high quality work. Anything I do put out, because I have thought about it so intentionally, is going to be good enough. And, there were so many pieces of work that I never put out. And oh my gosh, I can't even believe this happened or occurred, but there was a piece of work that I filmed that I wasn't 100% happy with. I promise this happened. I'm not lying. I wasn't going to post it.
It's always in drafts, isn't it?
It's always in drafts. And I went, you know what? I've got nothing to post tonight. Let's just put it onto the internet. I woke up the next morning. I know we've not spoken about followers, but with 15,000 new followers from that one video, I was like, you're joking me. Like, it was a real moment for myself where I said, you know what? The universe has come back to you and showed you that good is good enough, that the expectations you're placing on yourself to, always show up in this A+ version, is a pressure only you're asking, and you're only putting it on yourself. So learning, extending that into next year of, removing some of that need of perfection and, putting things out into the world in a good is good enough mindset.
Where it really sort of comes down to is also you get to this state, I think, when you're it becomes contrived and you're looking at all these things that all these other creators are doing. It's like, oh, I don't have this fancy pants canvas. Yes. And maybe I should buy one. And then you buy it. But then you're like, now I have to use it.
The fancy pants camera, yeah.
Because it does become contrived. And then you're just going, why is this not why have you told yourself what you did before wasn't good enough?
Yes, absolutely. What narrative? Yeah, what comparison did you make to take yourself away from what, did align with you?
Yeah, and I really like that you sort of want to actually walk into a kinder space yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. Especially when I know, starting a business is going to be something that has those challenges, and I'm going to want to, what I put out to the world, I want to be a direct reflection of the quality that I, want to put out. But understanding that, you are allowed to be a beginner. That was another lesson I majorly focused on last year, actually, was allow yourself to be a beginner, allow yourself to learn, and allow yourself to be bad at things, So I think next year I'm going to be really understanding of myself as a beginner once again.
Yeah, this was something that I actually spoke about a little while ago. Was there's always this, one of the biggest barriers to entry to anything, I think, especially for women, is the jargon around a lot of the work that we do.
Yes.
And anytime you want to scale up, so it's great, you're an micro-influencer, but the moment you want to scale up, go to big business. And the management side, go into having an accountant or doing a BAS.
Yes.
And an example.
Exactly.
The jargon just gets put on you, and then you're just either expected to know things or you're shamed for not knowing. What do you mean you don't know how to do a business income statement? Well, why do I want to? I'll just know accountant.
Yes. Yeah.
It's simple as that. So I think it's really valuable that you said that, because there's always that sort of barrier going, especially I hate to say that it is harder for women, but it is.
It is, yes.
Especially when you're young, you're not treated seriously, you're not taken seriously. And then when you do try to step into these shoot this into these big spaces and be a big girl about just like, what do you mean you don't know?
Yeah.
You could just kind of like put down.
And you permit going into that with a permittance of, I am allowed to be a beginner because I am beginning something, like
Unapologetically saying, I don't know.
No, I don't know. And there's so much power. There's so much power in that. And, especially jumping into, the creative world for people that are wanting to step into this space is, understanding that you may hear, conversations around, or you may feel that worry about what are the people from my high school going to think, or what's my great auntie going to comment, and, but understanding that if you view yourself through a professional lens and you allow yourself the space to be like, I am a woman in business, I am someone that is holding space and is, again, unapologetically me, you are allowing yourself the right to be that person, and people will follow. You create a lens in which people view you through. You are in control of the narrative. View yourself through the business lens and people will follow.
I love that. I think those are some very great words to head up on, and a word of wisdom for someone so young. But I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for being here, because I not only learned a lot for myself, but just the absolute value that you've been able to give our listeners. There were so many helpful things for people that are starting out. So nothing but thanks.
No, and the same thing.
It has been amazing having Brooke in the studio with us today, and I had such a wonderful chat with her. The biggest thing that I think I really sort of clued onto with what she said was with the piece regarding not attaching your value and your authenticity to a number. And I think that's really important to anyone and all of us, all of our listeners that are starting out in business. For me personally, my brand strategy is still relatively in its infancy. So I personally found that incredibly valuable, and I have no doubt that whoever's starting out and wanting to go into the field of being a creator, being an influencer, being in the digital marketing space would find that advice incredibly useful, because you are going to start off with lower numbers. You're not magically necessarily going to get millions of views. And to me, it was so important that someone like Brooke did actually say, feel validated in the work that you do and take pride in the work that you do, because it's really important to not put the value of what you do to a particular number, regardless of whether you're getting 2,000 or 200,000 views on something. And it's been it is an obvious thing to some, but I think it's really important to have that actually said out loud. But here at You're in Charge, we're all about you and your business journey. So if this chat with Brooke has inspired you, tell us. Search for ThincLab, that's THINC Lab on all socials, and leave us a comment. Or email us at thincher@adelaide.edu.au. All the links and info you'll need are now in our show notes. Make sure you hit follow and share this show with your friends, because next episode is with powerhouse Alyssa Fraser, renowned block winner of 2013, interior designer and owner of Alive Body.
This lights us up like we would never believe. It's so hard. We put in all this dedication, like we work our asses off, but we are so lucky that we get to do what we love every single day. And I look at the clock and I'm like, oh my God, please don't be 5 o'clock up already. I don't want to be like, it's not time. I'm like, I'll still going.
Thanks for listening, and always remember, you're in charge of your business journey. You're in Charge is brought to you by ThincHer, an initiative of ThincLab at the University of Adelaide. Google ThincHer, that's THINCHER, to join our empowering community of like-minded women in business. You're in Charge was recorded on Ghana land. We acknowledge the Ghana people, the original custodians of the Adelaide claims, and the land on which the University of Adelaide's campuses at North Terrace, Waite and Roseberthy are built.